Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to get started with a special cake just for Christmas. However, you can make this cake whenever you like. It doesn't have to be Christmas. I'm making a chocolate sponge roll, also known as I think like a Yule log, something along those lines. Okay, so technically a sponge roll, it doesn't have any like milk or butter or anything like that in it, but this particular one I wanted to add those ingredients. I want to make this as beginner friendly as possible. I want this to be a cake that you feel like you can make for Christmas if you want to do something a little special for whoever you are cooking for. This one is freezable. I will go through instructions on things like that as we get into the video, but what I want to do is make a chocolate cake. I want it to be filled with just a Chantilly cream, which is just a fancy way of saying sweet vanilla cream. And I also want to put a bit of a cherry ripple through it. That's just my little bit of Christmas. You could cover this in a chocolate ganache if you wanted to. You could pipe cream on the top if you wanted. So the first thing I need to do is make sure my cherry that's going to be rippled through my cream is cool. So what I've done is a while back, I had a tin of cherries. I opened them, I used a portion of it, and I've put all the rest, including the juices, in a freezer bag in my freezer. So today I have taken out about half a cup of that. I have cherries and the juice that they were canned in my jug here. I'm going to give that a blitz with my stick blender. I want the cherry to be broken through the liquid. Then I'm simply going to thicken it on the stove using a bit of corn flour until I'm happy with the thickness, and I will pop that in the fridge to get nice and cold. The thing with these sponge rolls is there are steps you need to take in order to have success, and one of those steps is that the cake is cold when you do put your filling in it, and also that your fillings are cold, okay, especially if you're working with cream. So all I'm going to do is just blitz this half a cup of cherries in their juice. Some lumps are okay, but whole cherries are just a bit too big. So I'm happy that it's got just a little bit of lumpage to it. Okay, if you can see that, I've just got my saucepan here. I'm going to just pour that in there. Now, because I am working with cold ingredients right now, I'm going to add my corn flour directly to the pot. If for some reason I had started heating this up and then remembered I needed to add the corn flour, I would mix my corn flour with a little bit of water or cherry juice just to make a bit of a slurry before I add it, okay? So those steps are important. If you don't do it in that way and you just dump corn flour into a hot liquid, you will get just lumps of corn flour. Okay, I'm going to pop that on the stove, heat it up until we get a nice thick, jammy consistency. And just stir it until it thickens. The white sort of chalky color will go away and it will become clear. And then it will thicken and we will know that it is good and done. So you can see it's starting to thicken. It's getting like a jammy consistency. And it's gone from that chalky sort of white color to a shiny, glossy color. It's nice and thick. I'm happy with that. Turn the heat off. So if you want to add a little bit of cherry liqueur, now would be the time to do that. Add it to your cherry filling here. I'm just going to put this into a separate bowl to cool down, because like I said, this needs to be cold before we go adding it to either the cake or the cream, no matter which way you choose to do things. I'm going to pop that in my fridge and then move on to making the cake. So you want to preheat your oven to about 160 to 180. So somewhere in there, that will be dependent on your oven. So we want a moderate oven. So I'm setting mine at 175. It is fan forced. You need to sort of know your oven to know your temperature. If you have quite a hot oven or you find that things cook really quickly, do 160 just to be safe. If your oven is cold and it seems to take forever to cook things, bump it up to 180, okay? So this is a Swiss roll tin. I will measure it and make sure that is down in the description box for you below. What I like to do is I don't even bother greasing this. I just go straight in with a bit of parchment baking paper. This is not wax paper. This is the kind that is not requiring greasing, okay? So parchment paper, it's known as baking paper in Australia. I make sure my piece is slightly bigger than my tray. This is going to come in handy when we go to roll it, all right? The other thing I do like to do is scrunch mine up. It does make fitting it into my tray a little bit easier. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. You can just lay it on your pan. The biggest problem people have when they make a Swiss roll is they overcook their cake and then it becomes cracky. It cracks. Mine may crack anyway, sometimes they just do, but that is like the biggest problem, is it cracks and it won't hold together. So there we go, my tray is covered in paper. You want to be a little bit organized if you're going to make a sponge cake. This isn't something we just go dump everything in, chuck it in a pan and hope for the best, okay? We are working with delicate air, so you're going to need a spatula to fold. I'm going to show you what folding looks like in case you don't know. We are going to be using a stand mixer. You can use hand beaters as well. You do need to beat your eggs and sugar really well together, and I'll go through that now. The other thing that's really important is we need room temperature eggs. Don't go using cold eggs. Pull them out a couple of hours before you want to make this cake. Mine are here. This recipe calls for 4 eggs. It's using the whole egg, and we are using it all at once. So we're not needing to separate things. I am keeping this as simple as I possibly can for a sponge cake, okay? Okay, so over here, what I have done in order to speed this video up just slightly is I have pre-measured all of my ingredients. That is all I've done. There will be sifting involved. I haven't done any of that. I have just simply weighed my measurements and popped them in their own individual little containers to the side here. If you're looking for the recipe for today, it will be down the very bottom of my description box, all the ingredients I used today. The method is not there, that's what the video is for. I can only put limited information in that description box. So if you're using a stand mixer, we are going to be using the whisk attachment. Okay, you usually keep this one for things like cream and meringue. We are using it today for our cake because we're not going to actually beat the flour. We are going to use our mixer to get our sugar and our eggs really well incorporated together. I am using just plain white sugar and it had some lumps. So sift your dry ingredients, okay? For this sponge cake, we're going to sift all of them. So that is just my sugar there. And if you just use a spoon to help you with the grainy bits, it will get any lumps out, all right? So just some sugar in my bowl. I now want to add my 4 eggs. I always crack my eggs into an individual container just in case there's something wrong with an egg or it's gone bad. I don't want to ruin my whole batch of whatever I'm making. So straight in with our 4 room temperature, very important, eggs. Eggs and sugar. We want to get this whisking. It's going to take about 4 minutes roughly. We want our mixture to be thick and we want the sugar to be dissolved into the egg and we want it to form ribbons. So I'll show you what that looks like. But get this whisking, I'm going to clean this up and then we'll start sifting some of our other ingredients. So that's about medium to medium high. and I'll move it up to sort of a higher speed once everything's sort of incorporated a bit better. You want your eggs to be pale, thick, and about triple in volume, okay? Which is where we are at. While that was happening, we needed to do a couple of things, but because that's noisy, I'm waiting until now. But if you make this at home, turn your mixer on, then do these next two steps, all right? We want to sift all of our dry ingredients together. It is important that you do sift them. When making a sponge cake, air is everything, okay? We need our cake to stay as light and airy as possible. So in here, I have some plain flour. Use cake flour if you have. If you have cake flour, use it. I don't have cake flour. So I have my plain flour here, and I'm going to add just a tablespoon of corn flour to that to make cake flour. So that was 60 grams of plain flour, 1 tablespoon of cake flour. We are sifting. I'm also going to add my cocoa. So I have here 25 grams of cocoa powder. All right, to that I want to add, I have 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and I have 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. Give those a mix. I am going to sift these 2 more times. So we've sifted everything into our first bowl to begin with. Now we're just going to sift it all again, making sure we are well mixed. It seems like work, but it really is very simple. And then a final time. Okay, that is called triple sifting. If you come across a recipe that asks you to do that, this is what it is. We are adding air, but we're also mixing those ingredients together really well and removing anything that we don't want in our recipe will be caught up in the sifter. Okay, that is our dry ingredients. That's ready to be added. We want to mix together some milk, and I've got some oil here. Now, like I said at the beginning of the video, traditionally these sort of sponge cakes don't have any of this in it. This is simply to make it simpler for people who maybe haven't made one of these cakes before, or it's been like a really long time since you've made one. This is sort of like a cheat's way of getting away with it. So in here I have some warm milk. So all I've done is put my milk in. I have 60 mils of milk. I've just warmed that up in the microwave until it's warm. And here I have 30 mils, roughly 2 tablespoons of oil. I'm using olive oil because I like the way the olive oil plays against the cherry, but a neutral oil would be best. I wouldn't use coconut oil simply because I find it a bit overpowering. So I would probably stick with something neutral, as in not much flavour, unless you deliberately want that flavour coming through like I do with the olive oil. Okay, now once your eggs and sugar form a ribbon, which is like this. You see that? Okay, you know that you are just about ready. We are just about ready to continue. I'm going to turn this back on just for another couple of seconds, just to get the air back in there. And I'm going to add my vanilla now to my mixer. Okay, so I've got a good teaspoon of vanilla here. Full speed. Okay, we are beautiful and pale. Our ribbon is really happening. Okay, now tip 1, don't bang your beater on the side of the bowl. You can shake it above it. or you can simply use your spatula to get the egg mixture off. We want to keep as much air in this cake as we possibly can, which means we are now working lightly. So if you're a bit heavy-handed when it comes to cooking things, or you find that cakes are always tough, it might be that you are a little bit heavy-handed, okay? So think of this as every time you mix this, you are popping air bubbles, okay? We want this to be light and fluffy. We are going to alternate between half of our dry mixture and half of our liquid mixture by adding it into our bowl. We are going to be folding. So if you don't know what folding is, it is the motion of around the edges and underneath and over. So it literally is folding. We are not beating, we are not like slapping it together. It's gentle. Think gentle thoughts. Okay, so half of our pre-sifted flour, or even just a little bit more than half is okay, and half of your liquid mixture. You can pour that at the same time, and then gently fold it all together, scooping from the bottom and lifting up over itself. You will notice that it takes a little bit of time before things start to really mix together. And I'm being ever so gentle, scraping the sides, scraping up from the bottom, up over itself. So these ingredients naturally will sink beneath your eggs, which is why you've got to scrape the very bottom of the bowl and fold it over. Until you feel like you've incorporated everything there. You should still be light and fluffy and airy despite all this mixing that we are doing or folding. Then we will add the rest. Again, don't bang your spatula on the side of your bowl. I'm happy with that as being mixed in enough. Now we want to pour straight into our pan. And now we're ready to go straight into the oven. So this is only going to take about 10 minutes in the oven, all right? So set a timer, but also keep an eye on it. If we overcook our cake, we will have more problems with rolling, all right? While that is in the oven, I've just cleaned up my workspace. I've got, my mixer is still out because I need to whip my cream for the filling, but I won't be doing that yet. I need to get now prepared for when I take my cake out. So when we take our cake out of the oven, we need to roll it up, okay? We'll trim off any edges if they seem hard, but we want to roll this up while it's nice and warm. And we have a couple of options with that. We can roll it up in just paper, sprinkled with a little bit of sugar. Now the sugar is there to stop the paper sticking to the cake, all right? And it just doesn't really do anything else other than add some bit more sweetness. But that's option one. Another option is to use a tea towel. And again, we need to sprinkle that with a little bit of sugar to roll up our cake. Our cake will then cool fully once it's rolled, okay? So this is what has to happen in order to get the cake to roll when we fill it and it is cold. We need to teach it that it needs to be in that rolled state. So what we then do is unroll it, fill it, roll it back up, and it will naturally want to stay in that position. If you tried to roll a cake that you baked otherwise, and you didn't roll it up first, you would just have cake breaking off with each roll, okay? This is how sponge rolls or Yule logs or any of those cakes, this is how they hold their form. It's by rolling them when they're warm. All right. This is a clean tea towel, fresh baking paper. All right, I tested my cake by pressing and making sure it was coming back at me, all right? So the first thing is we need to get this very quickly coated in a little bit of sugar. You can also use cocoa if you want to. I like the sugar. So a sprinkle of sugar. We want to take our paper up. This is why I did extra large or larger than my actual tray paper and didn't cut it or anything like that. And then we want to tip it out. Okay, yes, that was hot. The pan is hot. This hasn't cooled down. Straight away, we need to get our paper off because this I find sticks, the one it was baked on. Whenever I've done this and forgotten to take the paper off or thought I'll just save myself a step, this layer of paper usually sticks. And do it gently, hoping not to tear our cake too much. So we want to roll our short end over to our long end. So this is where you just use your tea towel, turn your cake around so it is this way. Use your paper here and your tea towel. We're going to roll this all up on itself, okay? Just like so. Until it is sitting happily like that. Now this we are just going to set to the side. That is going to cool at room temperature. I'm not going to force cool this by putting it in the fridge or the freezer or anything like that. That will cool down at room temperature. While that's happening, we can think about cleaning up and also whipping our cream. I didn't whip my cream at the beginning because I don't want it to lose the stability that it has. And this is where, if you're wanting to freeze, this is the stage you would do that in, okay? You can freeze these sponge rolls with the filling, with especially if it was a jam roll, you could just make the jam roll and freeze that one because it would be complete. If you're wanting to add fresh cream, I prefer to freeze them unfilled. And how you would do that is allow this to come to room temperature, allow it to cool right down as it is. Then wrap it really well in Glad wrap in its rolled state, just like this, in its tea towel. Keep that in your freezer. Once you're ready to use your sponge roll, it'll last about 2 months in the freezer like that. Take it out of the freezer and let it defrost completely in your fridge, okay? Don't defrost it on the countertop. It could create too much condensation and you end up with a bit of a wet cake. Defrost it in your fridge, then you can unroll it gently once you are completely thawed. I would give it at least a day, and then you could fill it with your filling, roll it back up, and you could serve it. An alternative is you fill it completely, the whole cake is done, then you wrap it really well in Glad wrap and freeze that. It won't last quite as long, maybe 1 month in the freezer. Again, you would thaw it in the fridge completely before you need it, so I'd do it the day before. And also, if you're using fresh cream, it can break down a bit and sort of become sloppy in that whole defrosting process. So that is why when I'm doing a fresh cream sponge roll, I will freeze the cake component and do that cream part fresh. You can also make these using a mock cream or like a buttercream style. And if you do that, of course, you can fill it completely, freeze it in the same way that you would if it was cream, and then thaw it in the fridge, and that will be fine. That won't break down at all. So there are your options for freezing. Now I'm just going to let this completely cool down, and you can tell just by running your hand along it that it is still warm. I'm going to clean up my mess and get prepared to make the cream. All right, let's get our cream whipped. Just move my cake to the side. My bowl is nice and clean. So is my whisk. I'm thinking about 300 mils of whipped cream. That would be one of the small containers if you were just buying cream for this. This is a 600 mil, so I'm just going to eyeball half of this container. Thereabouts. Okay. I have about a teaspoon of vanilla essence going straight in, and then I have about between 1/4 and 1/3 of a cup of icing sugar. Now to stabilize whipped cream, you can add actual stabilizers. You could add a little bit of gelatine that's been dissolved. I like to just add about a tablespoon of powdered milk, okay? That just stops the cream from breaking down too much. I don't know the science behind it, I just know that it seems to work pretty well. So straight in here, I'm going to get this whipped until we get nice firm peaks. We don't want to over whip it, so don't just set it and walk away. Keep an eye on it. The best way to know that your cream is at like stiff peaks is when you lift your mixer, the blades of the whisk will have cut essentially the cream, and it will hold itself up. It won't just melt back down into itself, okay? So just keep that in mind. I'll show you what I mean in a minute. Okay, so this is what I was talking about. As the whisk has come out, it has left a clean hole, and you can see it just cuts through the cream, okay? So you just want your cream to be really well whipped, but not to the point of it becoming butter. And that did not take long at all with the electric mixer. And again, don't bang your whisk on the side of your bowl, because you will be hitting air or beating air out of the whole bowl of cream. You can just hit it on your spatula if you need to. Okay, that is our cream whipped. So my cherry filling is thick and cold, as you can see. Okay, now you have a couple of options. You can just spread the cherry and then put cream on top if you wanted to. I want to have a go at doing a ripple effect, so I'm okay if I stuff it up or make a mistake as well. And I will, in complete honesty, tell you my cake did crack, all right? I checked it already. My cake cracked, so there's not a lot I can do in regards to that other than just make the best of it. I have left it rolled up the whole time. As you can see, it's still rolled. I'm just going to gently unroll, and that's where I have cracked in the middle there. And I did end up putting my paper, using just my paper as well. So I'm just going to hold that back a little bit when I put the cream in, because otherwise it's just going to continue to fold over on itself. What I'm thinking is I want to add my cherry to my cream, but I don't want it to be too, I don't want it to be all pink. I want it to be rippled. So I'm just going to add all that cherry filling and then barely fold it in. That's about it. That's all I'm going to do as far as folding it in goes. Now, when we put the cream in our cake, we need to leave a section at the, not the beginning, at the end of the cake that we don't put any cream on, because as we roll this back up, it is naturally going to push the cream further forward. So to keep it sort of as neat as possible, we want to keep our cream at least probably 2 centimeters, an inch inch-ish from the edge. We roll the cake up in the exact same way that we had it rolled. So the beginning of our cake roll will end up being the center of our cake, okay? So I'm just going to put my cream on my cake. Hopefully I haven't whipped too much. Okay. All right, I'm sorry, my microphone hasn't been turned on, so if there's problems with audio, I'll do my best to fix that up. I want to use a small offset spatula just to get this spread out. I don't want to mix too much because I don't want the ripple effect to be ruined, but just gently get the cream from the beginning of your sponge to the edges, remembering to leave a nice gap at the end here. And then in just the same way as we rolled it up before, we're going to roll it up again, and you can use your piece of paper to help you. So you can pop that in the fridge like that so that it can firm up. We do want this to be firm before we go trying to cut it. I am going to try and lift mine over here to my plate, and then I'll just pop that whole thing into the fridge. So using the paper, now you can see my cracking that has happened. Again, it's happened in a couple of spots. I did over bake my cake. It really is very easy to do. You can easily hide that though. If you put ganache on it, melted ganache, that will hide it. You can pipe cream on the top, that will also hide it, okay? Or you can just accept the fact that it's homemade and nothing is perfect in the real world. I will still be dusting mine with icing sugar and putting a little bit of decoration on it, and I'll show you that, but I want to just pop this in the fridge just to let it cool down for probably half an hour, just to let the cream stabilize, I guess, itself a little bit, get the cake to firm up just slightly, and then I'll show you it all finished up. I just whipped a little bit more cream. I'm going to pipe some on that top, on the crack there. So yeah, if you want to whip extra, or whip all of the cream and then put some in a piping bag before you add your cherry filling. Otherwise you're going to have the ripple in the cream that you put on the top, if you put the cream on the top at all. So I whipped about an extra 200 mils, roughly, just enough to do a couple of little swirls on the top. Set up in the fridge for a little bit. I'm just going to pipe a little swirl down the center, hide that crack and make it look a little bit more festive. I'm going to dust with a bit of icing sugar. So there we have our Christmas dessert, decorated, super simple, super easy. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know down below if you make this one. Thank you to all my new subscribers. Thank you to everyone who's been following me from the very beginning. I do appreciate your support. I do appreciate you liking, subscribing, and commenting. Don't forget to hit that like button and the subscribe button and the little bell if you want to see more content. I try to deliver weekly. This is an absolute crowd favorite. I know I've sectioned it, it looks like 4 servings, but the servings are much smaller than that. That's just for decoration. Have a fantastic week and I'll catch you next time.